Well, good afternoon, everybody. Thanks, everybody, for joining us and for your all of your ongoing great work on behalf of our region and all the great things that you continue to do to keep DSM strong. I think I know most of you. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Jay Byers, CEO of the Great Wine Partnership, and we've got another great lineup and agenda for you today for our investor and member briefing. We'll be hearing again today from our healthcare system leaders at Unity Point and Mercy One. We're also going to be getting an agriculture industry update from Farm Bureau Federation, John Deere, and Corteva, and also sharing some information on a exciting new initiative that we're working on with the Downtown Farmers Market. So again, a great lineup today, and really looking forward to another robust conversation. Would ask that you please mute your phones if you've not already done so. And if you have any questions or comments throughout, please do so in the chat function. And again, our goal with these is to make them as interactive and robust as possible. Did want to share some information, and I have shared some of this information via email with at least our board. But if you haven't seen this, this was some pretty extraordinary data that came out that was shared with the State Data Center at the State Library of Iowa that was analyzing 2019 U.S. Census data, just in terms of showing the ongoing robust growth of our region. And just in 2019, for example, the city of Bondurant grew 80%, and Grimes 79.3%. And then since 2010, Waukee has grown 74.4%, Ankeny 47.7%, Johnston 30.7%, and West Des Moines 19.7%. Again, that's over this past 9 years. Pretty extraordinary numbers. Overall, Ankeny had the largest numeric increase in population in the state since 2010, growing by almost 22,000 residents. West Des Moines grew by more than 11,000, Waukee by more than 10,000, and Des Moines by more than 10,000 as well. If you look at just those 4 cities, accounted for 49.2% of Iowa's population growth statewide since 2010. So again, just seeing some really incredible population growth here in Central Iowa in DSM USA here over the past decade. Even with the pandemic that we've been dealing with here for the last 2 months, that we still are projecting and foreseeing rapid growth moving forward. And as we're continuing to look at our talent attraction and retention strategies, we are just to share with everybody, we're continuing to refine those messaging strategies and continuing to make that work forward-looking going forward. So again, very exciting numbers and a great foundation for us to continue to work off of as we move forward as a region. Also, a lot of great work continues to happen with the DSM Forward Task Force, and we continue to roll out new playbooks and continue to update those playbooks. So thank you to everybody who has worked on those in our ongoing effort as a region to have a smart, safe, and collaborative approach to reopening our economy and moving forward. So now I'm going to turn it over to Tiffany Toshack, the Great Wine Partnership's Chief Strategy Officer, for some more specific updates on both our short-term strategic plan and DSM Forward. Tiffany.
Thanks, Jay. And as Jay mentioned, we continue to stay focused on our short-term strategies, keeping businesses in business, keeping people working, and keeping our community healthy. And we have launched another 2 industry playbooks as part of DSM Forward. Since launch of DSM Forward, that webpage and those web pages have now seen nearly 7,500 unique page views, and visitors are spending on average about 2.5 minutes per page on that site, which is really great engagement. So that tells us that there is a lot of interest, continues to be interest in the DSM Forward playbooks and information. We also just recently have launched and added to the DSM Forward webpage on the FAQ site, cleaning supplies, PPE, and health screening tools. So vendors that offer these different tools for businesses that would like to take a look at those are now available. I'll drop the link to that in the chat here in just a moment. And additionally, related to DSM Forward, we're continuing to look for storytelling opportunities, so would just invite you to share with us anything unique that your organization is doing to prepare for economic recovery, or any strategic partnerships that you've put together, or additional just media PR support that you would like. Please, as always, let us know. We are here to help you tell your story on behalf of the region. Since COVID-19 began, we've now published more than 145 blogs. We have more than 40 podcasts that have been published or that are currently in production, and we know there are many other stories to share. So let us know if you are interested in being featured in any of those, or if you have some coworkers that would be happy to share their stories. We continue to promote the DSM Strong hashtag, which now has more than 43 million impressions. So invite everyone to continue to participate in the DSM Strong messaging from a storytelling perspective, but also that hashtag usage. And we also continue to promote the DSM Local Challenge hashtag. We launched that in partnership with Catch Des Moines, as many of you know, and we encourage all of you to continue to support small and local businesses. And currently that hashtag, the DSM Local Challenge hashtag, has more than 37 million impressions. So please continue to utilize that hashtag as you're buying and supporting local, and challenge your friends and family to do the same. Last week, we published a video showing some of the highlights of the DSM Local Challenge, and I will drop that into the chat function here, but take a look. You may even be featured in that video. So Derek Lippincott from our team put together a video, a compilation of many of the different DSM Local Challenges, and that highlight reel will be in the chat box here shortly. We have hosted more than 45 events and have also launched a DSM Forward Ask the Expert series to help leaders in each industry connect, share, and exchange information and resources related to moving forward in this next phase of reopening and reintegration. And we have a number of these events that are coming up in the next few weeks. So we have a full list on our website. We'll drop that into the chat here shortly as well. Jay?
Thank you, Tiffany. Great update as always, and thanks for all of your work. We're now going to move into our update from our health systems. Again, this continues to be a highlight for me for the week in terms of learning new data, in terms of where trends are going, and advice for us as a region. And as I mentioned before, our strategy with DSM Forward has been to be smart and safe and collaborative. And we've continued throughout the COVID-19 pandemic to lean heavily on our healthcare experts at Unity Point Health and Mercy One, and great to have our friends joining us today. So today we have David Stark with Unity Point Health and Bob Ritz with Mercy One, and I will turn it over to them for our update today.
All right, Jay, thanks. This is David here, and I'll kick things off. Since we've been a couple weeks without presenting some slides to this group, we thought we'd put a couple together to give you some visualization of updates on things we've presented in the past, and also taking a larger look at regionally. So first slide here is, and this is as of yesterday, so it gives you a sense, and this is statewide data, directly off the Iowa Department of Public Health website, of how many people have been tested for COVID-19 in the state, and our positive numbers there, 17,690. Today's numbers actually climbed quite a bit. They went over 18,000, so there's been nearly 600 new cases from yesterday. And some of that is the backlog of getting things, a lot more testing happened after Memorial Day. That was a light day of testing. So things picked up on Tuesday for those results. So we have hit over 18,000, and our overall positive rate is 13%. But you see a note down there in this slide, the blue box below that, which is part of the positive trend here, is while that's the overall number, we have started to see a lower positive rate the more testing we've done, which you would expect. as we've not, done as much in just nursing homes or specific employers. More people are able to get tested, and so the testing rate positive for yesterday was just a little over 6%. So that has continued, and you see that trend line has continued to come down. Angie, if you go to the next slide, please. This one is a little hard to read. You're probably going to have to make it larger in your screen, but something that I give Bob and Carl a lot of credit for. They talk about the RT factor, and this is an example of how virulent the disease is. In other words, if you are over 1, which we have been in Iowa in the past, means that the transmission rate is greater than 1 to 1. So being below 1, and you see where I've got the arrow there, that is Iowa. We're at 0.9. So that is a little higher than we were at a week ago. We were at 0.83 a week ago. But the important line is to be under 1, because that means the disease is relatively under control. It's not transmitting greater than 1 to 1 person, etc. What else I have highlighted on this, and this is all the states in the country, and this was as of yesterday. The colors that are in green and the red are all Midwest states. So if you can just see visually, most of the Midwestern states are below 1. Which you see is a positive trend there. The one that's not is North Dakota, and that one is in red, and it's just above 1. That has been trending up recently. But in terms of where we've been under 1 now for, I want to say, at least 3 weeks, if not 4. So that is another positive trend that contributes to our reopening in a smart way and to continue to manage it in a smart way. Last slide, Angie. So this gives you a sense of Polk County. So this is Polk County activity right in our own backyard, dating back to the beginning of this in March, and then it takes a projection. This is done by one of the scientific leaders at Polk County. So it's as of the 21st, but you can see where the projections are for where we see Polk County, assuming proper social distancing, assuming that we keep things in check and open smartly, we continue to see a downward trend. But what we will see, and we saw this just the last couple of days, we will invariably see spikes through this, where we'll have a whole host of cases one day because of some additional testing, or if there is a outbreak at a facility. In Iowa, the latest hotspot is Buena Vista County, where Storm Lake is. They now have gone up to, just a few weeks ago, they had very few cases, single digits, and they now have over 600 cases in Buena Vista County. So that's a concern. Obviously, they're actually the 7th greatest increase of a county in the country this past week. So inevitably, we will have some of those things, so something we want to keep a close eye on here in Polk County, and we're doing that. But we're seeing overall a trend that's coming down. Our hospitalization rates, Mercy One, ourselves, Broadlawns, continue to be able to handle the current census that we have, and that's been relatively steady. So patients are being discharged, new patients coming in, but we're able to open up smartly on our side to be able to do some of the reactivation things like elective procedures and that sort of thing. So that's an update of a few slides for you, going through the most recent data that I have, and I would turn it over to my esteemed colleague, Mr. Ritz, and ask him to make some comments as well.
Thanks, David. Can you hear me all right?
Sure can.
I asked Debbie to come in. My computer says it's going to shut down at 12:21 for upgrade, so I'm going to be really fast. And thanks. There's not much to add. Let me just give you a couple additional thoughts, and I think David did a great job. One, we are now working on what we call recovery, which obviously this whole group is organized around. In healthcare, that may look a little different for a couple of reasons. One, we've been authorized to resume services that were deemed non-emergent. And so that we have begun to do, and we believe that's going to be a slow, gradual return. Secondly, we're trying to make sure that we have the proper focus on testing. And there are many more testing platforms being developed. Some of those deal with the viral load of the infection to determine if somebody has the infection. Some of those deal with the antibodies, otherwise known as serology testing. And there's a bunch of other mediums in between there. We want to do as much testing as possible, and until we are able to do proper testing in the most efficient way, it's probably going to be hard for us, our health systems, to restore to the level of services that we did before anytime soon. So we're very focused on that. To confirm David's point and reinforce it, we are on a decline. We have now today about 160 patients in our hospital with positive COVID diagnosis. But that was 200 a week ago. But we're also going to see these outbreaks. And I guess the one thing I would say is and I just left the Iowa Business Council board meeting to come over to this meeting. And I hear it in every meeting I'm in. And I guess the one thing I would say is let's not be alarmist. Let's not one statistic throw us off our trajectory of a positive return to where we need to be. And I say that because the one thing I just heard the economic forecasters say for the state of Iowa, and we hear it for the country, is the fact that we need to restore faith in consumers and in consumer behavior, which ultimately restores faith in our economy. So while we're going to have a meat packing plant have an outbreak, or while we may see an outbreak in a long-term care facility, or perhaps a jail or a prison or whatever, wherever there's a confined population that doesn't have much space to move, let's make sure we put the precautions in place so those organizations continue to operate. But let's not be alarmist and really trigger this resounding impact that we've got to close the economy or close a certain sector of the economy. We, I think, are on the downside, but this will not go away. And our ability to manage this to the level each of you expected us to do will be really defined in two ways. One, that we'll maintain a real focus and what I'll call a duplicity of services, that we'll have COVID-related services and non-COVID related ways of providing services. That's going to be on us. That's a challenge for us to manage. The second thing is a vaccine, and it should be no holds barred at every level. And once we get a vaccine, I think we're going to see a real rapidity of return. But until then, I do believe that we're going to be on a gradual, safe path to return, but it's not going to be 100% anytime soon. Jay and Tiffany and those would be my comments to add to David's.
Well, Dave and Bob, thank you so much again for joining us. Bob, I hope your computer holds up here.
Yeah, it's a very interesting situation when the box shows up and says, your computer will restart at 12:21. You have no options. It's like,
there are no options except to go with it.
Yeah, that's right.
I'll go mute. Thank you.
Well, we have one question so far from Bob Riley. And so that is, because of our extended labor shed, should we be looking at a combination of counties beyond just Polk County?
Absolutely. And the state is divided up into districts. You'll see on the Department of Public Health website, there's 1 through 7, and we're in District 1. So that expands quite a ways up, over to the Grinnell area, down south to the Missouri border, north up by Marshalltown, et cetera. So we do look at regionally, and that's how we're structured from a capacity and others. So in other words, what's happening in Buena Vista County, there's a lot of support over there from Sioux City to Mason City, and all of that. We would be a secondary support in this region, but that's how the state is divided up, and we look at it that way. So I showed Polk County as most pertinent, but you can certainly draw that line to the whole RMCC, and we do look at that and watch the trends there as well, because we are a bigger region. Hope that helps to answer your question about that.
Makes sense. So there's a next question is somewhat related to David, to what you just covered. As outbreaks happen in different counties, do we see a need to move resources or patients between locations?
I'll comment on that. We already do that in the event that the situation requires it. These are really not patients that you necessarily want to be transferring around if they have an active virus underway. We can do it if the clinical situation of the patient requires. Otherwise, we do have the ability in all of our all of our locations to manage the COVID patient population.
Yep, good example of that. A few weeks ago in Sioux City saw a significant outbreak. Both Mercy One here and Unity Point, Des Moines, took some patients from Sioux City. We tried to do as little of that, as Bob said, as possible, just the exposure with EMS personnel, moving the patient, PPE, but it was necessitated, and that's part of how the regions work together with their departments of public health to coordinate where those resources are, and we have a centralized reporting so we know where the availability of beds are and resources.
And to complement that comment, David, just to add to that, one of the reasons why I think the system approach to something like this is so helpful is that back to Sioux City, since it has been the area that has been of greatest concern on a per population basis, we've transferred staff there, we've transferred ventilators there. Can you still hear me?
We sure can.
Okay, my computer's restarting. At least I was smart enough to call you in by telephone. But we transferred resources to where the patients were, as opposed to transferring the patients to the resources. And if we were a small independent group of hospitals, we would not be able to do that. So that's why it's so important that the collaboration across the delivery system in Iowa be in place. That's one of my greatest takeaways in all this, is that we need to find the positivity of collaborating between Unity Point and Mercy One and Broadlawns and University of Iowa and others. We need to carry that ball forward and don't let the positive energy from that dissipate when the virus load, declines.
Excellent comments as always. One last question here, and this is from me. With the governor's latest round of openings and more to come, what additional advice, Bob and David, do you have for us as a region for us to continue to move forward in a safe, smart, and collaborative way?
I think this will sound like a broken record, Jay, but the 4 things we talked about since the beginning of this are critically important for every business to keep in mind. So your infection control practices, active hand washing, that should never go away. That should be a situation today, tomorrow, the next day. Making sure that you can accommodate as much social distancing, whether you're a retail store, whether you're a law firm, whether you're a restaurant or a swimming pool. Difficult in each one of those, try and accommodate that. How are you going to monitor and create that with your staff? In other words, if you're sick, stay home, taking temperatures, providing those precautions, wearing a mask when social distancing isn't there. And the 4th is maybe a new one, and I think we are there, but we can't forget creating a culture of really looking out for each other. This is too great of a time, and we've started to see it where people are getting upset with each other, taking it out on each other, and that's understandable as we've all been dealing with things we're not used to. But boy, we have got to look out for each other's safety, and that goes for our own team members, it goes for our customers, clients, etc. And we can create that culture. I think that'll go a long way towards getting the restart in a safe and effective manner.
And Jay, one other comment I would add to David's answer, and that is buy Iowa and be Iowa. And, we cannot let fear prevent us from living. We have to be smart. We have to do it as David outlined. And the other thing is we have to learn how to manage the population that's prone to the virus and not try to manage the population away from the virus. And there is, that is how the healthcare system is generally designed. We deal with illness where illness occurs. We deal with the epidemiology of illness and the density of it, and we know where heart disease is prone. We're going to have to change our mindset from just treating the general population as a potential to treating the population that's all I have to add.
Well, David and Bob, thanks again for your leadership. Thanks for joining us today. And as I've said many times, just want to let you know how much we appreciate the leadership of Unity Point Health and Mercy One, helping lead our region through this. So thank you so much. And we look forward to your ongoing guidance as we continue to work through this as a region in a safe, smart, and collaborative way. So thanks for joining us today.
Thank you.
So we're going to move into our next updates here, and been very excited to hear from these leaders, three folks who I've gotten to know extremely well and work very, very closely with, not only through the Greater Des Moines Partnership, but through the cultivation corridor. And we know that agriculture is an enormous part of the Iowa economy and in the Greater Des Moines DSM USA economy. And so we have three really great leaders who are joining us today and to provide us an update in terms of where the ag economy and from their perspective has been going, and where it's going in the future, and how we need to continue to make pivots with ag and ag business, just like we've been able to, just like we're doing with all other industries as well. So joining us today, we have Craig Hill with the Iowa Farm Bureau Federation. We've got Jed O'Connor with Court Ewa Agriscience, and Andrew Trager with John Deere Financial. So I think we'll just go ahead and go in that order, if that's okay, gentlemen, and we'll start with Craig. So Craig, thank you so much for joining us today, and how are things in Warren County?
Well, hi, Jay. Things are pretty beautiful, actually, right now in Warren County. We've got crops that have emerged well and are greening up. These rains were welcome, and so things look quite nice in Warren County. But let me begin on a positive note with planting season. And, farmers are optimistic in general, but I was kind of amazed, or I think it's very notable that this spring, when farmers got to the field, their attitudes really improved. They're producers. The fields were welcoming. We didn't have the unfair and difficult weather that we had last year. And the promise of that seed going in the ground and the promise of another crop really lifted their spirits. So we had lots of phone calls with county presidents, county leaders, district listing sessions, and every one of those, it was kind of amazing how their spirits were lifted. Many of our producers were finished corn and soybean planting in April, which is the first for many of their farmers in their career. We finished our farm planting in May 1st, and that was a record for us. But so I want to begin there, but also, yield's important. We strive for yield. We're producers. That's what we find beauty in doing. But revenue is important too, and revenue is yield times price. And we've taken severe hits on price. Questions remain on the future of the ethanol industry. Over half of Iowa's corn lands at an ethanol facility. Of course, we get some DDGs, some feed stuff, stuffs back from that process. But ethanol lost about 40, I think it was about 40% of its value in 32 trading days. We went down to about 86 cents a gallon as far as ethanol value. What the administration will do with SRE, small refinery exemptions, what will happen with this fuel or this energy war that we have ongoing with OPEC and Russia flooding the market, negative crude oil prices, the utilization of liquid fuels that we're experiencing right now because of COVID. So the ethanol industry is in some trouble. Out of the 204 plants nationally, I think only 49 plants are in full production. Some are idled, about 73, and the rest are slowed in their production. Questions also remain in trade, and 60% of our soybeans produced nationally go to export, and the majority of those soybeans are to China. Even though we have a phase 1 trade agreement that would have encouraged a lot of exports, we're disappointed in what we've seen exported so far. There's lots of news today about purchases by China, but they're overstated. They're way behind in where they should be in their purchases. Plus trade, I think just in general, globalization was our motive and goal for many, many years. Not nationalization, not America alone, not America first, the tariff wars, and now with COVID, we're seeing aggressive actions taken against China. So trade's a question mark. We are the second most export oriented state in the country in terms of ag products, so trade's going to be important. Then I'll get to the protein industry, and we are the #1 red meat producer in the country. We saw a 30% drop in 32 days in our cattle prices, 40% drop in our hog prices. We know the supply chain has had incredible stress and challenges getting product. I will state again, producers, that's what we like to do best. We have an abundance of pork, abundance of beef, abundance of corn and soybeans. It's getting it moved through the supply chain efficiently. So some concerns there. And of course, you've probably read and heard about the very difficult challenges and concerns about euthanization or disposal of animals that we can't get processed. Our slaughter and hogs, I'm a pork producer. On a daily basis, we slaughtered about 508,000 pigs per day. We got down to 280,000 pigs per day, which has created a backlog. That was a 40% decline in our harvest facilities efficiency. We're better than that today, but that backlog is still mounting. And what do you do with those animals? We're just in time with feeder pigs coming into facilities, fat hogs going out, and you got to keep these animals comfortable in a building, fed properly, and so it's created quite a challenge for us. I would remark, though, on the economic front, I'm not a banker, but I've been told that 83% of the balance sheets for farms is farmland ownership, 83%. So our balance sheets are still strong because farmland is stable. We haven't seen a decline as to farmland values. It's seen as an asset that's very tangible and attractive in times like this. We've seen low interest rates. So we have a very strong balance sheet, but a very emerging critical cash problem with farms. And the government assistance has helped. It's going to be essential going forward. We'll need more than what we've already received. And we'll look to the Farm Bill for protections, crop insurance, and so on going forward. But it'll take government assistance to keep us sustained and viable. I'll quit there, Jay.
Greg, thanks so much for joining us, and thanks for your leadership and for your long-term friendship. Appreciate it, and appreciate you making time for us today. And I look forward to Q&A, because I'm sure there's going to be plenty. Next up is Jed O'Connor with Court Ewa Agriscience. And Jed, I don't know if you knew this or not, but I'm a former Pioneer employee. I used to be a detasseler for Pioneer. So I look forward to hearing from you. Jed, are you still with us? I think you're on mute. There we go.
Hey, is that better?
Yeah, you got it.
All right, sorry about that. Well,
All good.
again, good afternoon, everyone. And Craig and I run in some of the same circles, talking to the same people and seeing some of the same data. So I'll try not to be duplicative to some of the things that he shared, but maybe just a few comments on overall ag, Court Ewa's approach during COVID and how we view it, not only here within the state of Iowa, but broader in the U.S. and globally as well. And then a couple comments on our Johnston Global Business Center. And so Craig talked about the early planning window and the favorable conditions, just to give some perspective. As of yesterday, corn planted in the state of Iowa is at 97% versus this time last year at 74%. And on the soy side, we're at 92% planted versus only having 30% of the crop in at this point in time last year. So what a difference a year makes. And, the crop went into the ground extremely well, and we've been treated, really well from a weather perspective since that time. Craig talked about, the things that we're watching every day that's having big impact on our farmer customers. Craig already talked about ethanol. From a dairy perspective, that industry has been impacted heavily because of where the price of milk is at. Although, because of a lot of the work from home and social distancing, we're all eating a lot of pizza, and so they're seeing a spike in cheese right now, and so hopefully that's going to give them a little bit of a lift in the carry versus, they were dumping raw milk, down the drain for a number of weeks and months there. Meat processing, restaurants, schools, supply chains, we're watching this, this really carefully from a standpoint of when we shut down the restaurants and the schools, we flooded the system with material that needed to go into the restaurants and the schools, and we had to figure out how we're going to get it into the grocery stores. We just need to be really conscious as we go back and we get the restaurants and schools open, and how are we going to make sure we don't have supply chain disruption from a meat processing standpoint, from just an industry standpoint in general. I don't know about Craig's farm, but we certainly have seen a bit of a move from corn to soybeans because of the commodity prices and the corn to price ratio, and just looking at simple economics. But without question, net farm income's down materially because of where we're at with commodity prices. We're advocating in a big way for additional support for our farmer customers. We got to feed a hungry world, and they need to continue to be viable and get through this, get through this phase. Our CEO, Jim Collins, was out with President Trump's CEO Council here a couple weeks ago and had an opportunity to represent not only Corteva, but the industry there. So those are some thoughts around just overall ag. From a Corteva perspective specifically, we've been fortunate in that we've pretty much had ongoing operations. Our supply chains have been intact. Farmers, our farmer customers wanted product earlier in the season. We had open windows, and we had that product ready to supply it. Obviously, social distancing gets a little bit easier as we get into our rural communities and working with our farmer customers. But we haven't had any material impact to our supply chains from specifically COVID. We have been leveraging digital tools to a significantly higher level than what we have in the past. We have, some of our farmer customers are operating as normal. Others just, don't want you on the farm right now. And so I think we got about 1,000 drones out right now doing stand counts. And instead of walking fields, we're doing stand counts with drones. And we've flooded our entire organization with those. And the uptake has been tremendous because it's amazing with technology. You can walk 1,000 acres in a morning and get stand counts versus what would take you, 4 or 5 days. Delivery recognition. When we drop off product, we're doing all that digitally now, so we don't have to hand papers back and forth. And we continue to really monitor closely the whole social distancing and keeping people safe. Advocating for policy, and then managing costs in a really big way, because as we look, when our farmer customers and when the ag industry is stressed financially, so are we. So how do we make sure we continue to manage costs so that we can keep that R&D engine that's so important long-term running, and not have any disruption there. But from a field team standpoint, we're walking fields, we're delivering inputs, we're planting research plots, and so we've gotten a good start to the year. In terms of our Johnston Global Business Center, we've got about roughly 3,000 employees in Iowa. As we stand today, only essential employees are going into the global business centers. A lot of those folks are in R&D to keep the plants live, and to continue to move their projects forward. In operations as well, we're extensively on a bi-weekly basis looking at return to work. And Dave and Bob shared some numbers. We're watching those very, very carefully to where we get to a place where we say we need to start transitioning employees back to the workforce. And we're looking forward to that, certainly. And we've got active scenario planning because, even when we get back to full operations, clear through 2021, we'll continue to have scenario planning that says what happens when we see a spike, what happens if we see something in a specific plant. But the majority, we're fortunate from a standpoint that the majority of our facilities, both seed production facilities and R&D facilities outside of Johnston, are small shops. We have 10 or 20 or maybe 60 employees that work there, and social distancing is something that's very, very easy for them to do. So operations have been good. Maybe one final comment, and then I'll pass it back, Jay. Very proud of the partnership that we have with Mercy One. Bob can probably speak to it more extensively than I can, but we had some very passionate R&D folks, some scientists and some technicians that said we can do this and we can help out in this testing space. And so I've been working closely with Mercy One, with all the regulatory and government bodies to be able to do this and do this in the right way. And we're continuing to expand and improve on the process and the throughput as we speak today. So cool. The best story about that is when we finally got to a place where everybody agreed that we were going to be able to do this, we asked for volunteer employees that would work in that lab, in that environment with that material. And we had 50 people raise their hand day one and said, I'm all in. So that was pretty neat. So Jay, I'll turn it back to you and look forward to any questions.
Jed, thanks so much. And thanks for mentioning that partnership with Mercy One. I think that's very exciting in terms of community working together in innovative and unique and in different ways. And again, just a great example of great corporate citizenship. So thank you for joining us today. Next up is Andrew Trager with John Deere Financial, also a member of the Greater Des Moines Partnership Board and Executive Committee. So Andrew.
Hey, good afternoon, Jay. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Excellent. Apologize, some technical challenges here at Deere. We use, I think, our authorized forms of communication are Skype and WebEx and Microsoft Teams, but unfortunately Zoom isn't really one that we use. So I'm on my cell phone here, but appreciate the opportunity to provide a brief update on John Deere broadly, our response to the COVID-19 situation. And maybe I'll start with a few comments on the overall ag economy. Certainly, Craig and Judd really hit on many of the key things that are impacting the John Deere business, and the things that we're watching, very, very closely are the same things that Court Ewa and Farm Bureau certainly closely monitor. It's been a good spring, certainly from a planting perspective, so that's certainly been a very positive thing. And if you are in the large row crop farming business, by and large, what we're seeing and what we're hearing, and as we're talking to people, is the mood is pretty strong, and operating conditions are relatively normal. Craig's your comment about not being a banker, that is the business that I'm in, specifically here at John Deere Financial. But you're right, and about 83% of that farmer balance sheet is really the land, and the land prices continue to hold up very, very well. So there's strength in the farmer balance sheet, but this continued pressure on commodity prices now for many, many years in a row is certainly weighing heavily on the price and the income for the farmer customer. So certainly in this environment, the government aid has been very well received and very much necessary the last couple of years. And in the current program, I guess the USDA Direct Assistance to Farmers program, that's going to be responsible for distributing the $16 billion of the authorized monies from the CARES Act. That's going to be critical at this time for the farming community. And the sign up, I think, really opened up yesterday through the local FSA offices. So payments up to $250,000, farmers are eligible. and delivery of some of those funds that it sounds like will start maybe as soon as next week. So there's some positive things there. But again, it's certainly what we see, what we hear from the economic standpoint continues to be challenging. But what we all know on this call is, especially for those of us who grew up in Iowa and in and around the farming communities, that farmers have proven for over generations to be very, very resilient. So that's certainly a very, very positive thing when it comes to working and being around the ag economy. Maybe I'll just make a few comments around what John Deere has been doing around the globe, and then some specific comments about our operations in the greater Des Moines area. But our first priority, and again heard this from Jed earlier, but has really been the safety and health and overall welfare of our employees. Because we know that only by protecting our workforce can we ultimately deliver on our commitment to our customers and fulfill our role as an essential business, which Deere was designated by the federal government, and one designation that we're certainly very proud of and humbled by. We don't take those responsibilities lightly. And as we look back over the last couple months, we've very much and proactively been implementing additional health and safety measures within our operations, not just in the U.S., but all around the world. I would say, many of the measures that we've taken, we took very early and oftentimes ahead of regulations and official guidelines, things, like employee health screening before entering facilities, having personal protective equipment, whether it be masks or face masks, adhering to social distancing guidelines, and improving our overall cleaning and sanitation efforts, and then staggering our production schedules. Certainly, if you look at the Deere businesses and you think about the factory of producing equipment, that can be a challenge. There's been a lot of automation in the factory environment, certainly over the years, but there's an absolute need for a lot of human interaction on the factory floor, and getting distancing and appropriate safety measures in place has been a challenge, but one that we've been up to and have great examples, not just in the U.S., but all across the globe. The comment earlier about digitalization in times like these is certainly proving to be very, very important. Deere has invested heavily in the last 10 years to improve precision technologies in the equipment that help farmers around the world be more productive in their operations. And in a time like this, when getting out to the farm to help somebody fix a tractor during a planting season, or fix a planter that might be down, having remote access and getting visibility to potential system failures before they happen have been critical to make sure we get the parts to the customers when they need it the most. And the technologies are enabling that ability to keep farmers up and running. And in a year like this, when the weather's been great, that certainly helps us. But if we look back just a year ago when the weather was really tough, having technologies to make sure you're in the field when you can be and it's up and running is absolutely critical. If we look at our operations here in central Iowa, we've got a strong workforce in 3 significant locations. John Deere Financial, our global headquarters, are based here in Johnston. Our Intelligence Solutions Group, our Special Technologies Group, is also headquartered in the Des Moines area in Urbandale, with a recently opened headquarters within the last year. And then we have the factory up in Ankeny, producing cotton equipment and planting equipment and a few other things. If we look at the businesses that were more office-based for us, again, John Deere Financial and ISG, over 95% of our employees have been working from home since mid-March. And we had, business continuity plans certainly in place for different events, certainly not a pandemic like this, but it's been amazing how quickly we've been able to shift almost 2,000 employees between those 2 operations to work from home in less than a 2-week period of time. And as we, are talking here today at the end of May, with minimal disruption for our customers and for our dealers, and the ability to be highly productive in working from home has certainly been something that has surprised us in a very positive way, and now has us thinking about the return to work, or I should say return to office, because we've been working this entire time, but the return to office environment, what does that look like? Because again, we're learning quickly that we can do a lot of things remotely that we didn't think possible before. So certainly been very, very focused. Again, keeping our businesses up and running, that's the close second to keeping our employees safe. So that's been top of mind and top of priority for us. There's a couple of things at Deere I would say we're very proud of our ability to support our communities in which we live and work. We've been able to produce thousands of protective face shields and distribute those to the immediate and ongoing needs of healthcare workers in communities around the globe. And also our John Deere Foundation has provided support to many of the social safety nets in our home communities, again, around the globe, highlighted by some investments in food banks to help improve their overall capacity. So again, it's been certainly an interesting time where nobody would have expected this type of a global impact, but Deere has been doing everything in our power and taking, again, the essential business designation to heart and keeping our businesses up and running, which in turn help keep our farmer customers up and running, because food security, the global food supply and food security has never been, more important at a time like this with all the challenges that we're facing. So we're proud to be able to do our part to support that. And maybe the last comment, which is closest and nearest and dearest to my personal heart, is our John Deere Financial business. And that, I can talk here today and say that we've been able to continue to provide uninterrupted financing throughout this crisis on a global basis to all of our customers and dealers, and that we've been providing flexible terms, deferrals, restructuring of loans, providing support that customers need, because we know they need their equipment to do their work, their life's finest work. And we're doing everything in our power to help keep them in their equipment. So that those are probably maybe my last comments. Jay, I'll pass it back to you.
Andrew, thanks for your very insightful comments. Very much appreciate you joining us today. And both my grandparents on both sides are farmers, and as my grandpa Jensen always used to say, nothing runs like a deer. So thanks for joining us today, and really appreciate what you've been doing. We do have a couple of questions regarding China, and the first one, kind of combined, is how serious with the deteriorating relations with China, how serious is this of a threat for our ag exports? And sort of building on that, what are some of the reasons that are holding soybean buyers from China from placing more orders? Craig, maybe you want to take a stab at that one.
Take a stab at it. I know, right now, the value of the dollar is precluding a lot of sales. US dollar is so high relative to other currencies. So there are some advantages, but in some meetings that I've been involved with, some of the global grain merchants are reporting that all other things being equal in price, there's a preference given to other countries in terms of soybean purchases and some other purchasing, which you would expect because of phase one, the preference would be given to U.S. ag. There's only been about $5 billion of purchases so far of ag products on the first quarter. I've been told that phase one is landed value in China in the first year, 36.5 billion. So we're a long ways from, even getting, a large percentage of that purchase made. And so a lot of concerns there. We know that they lost half of their pork supply. We are the cheapest pork in the world, and we should be the first look. And although we are sending some pork, it's not to the degree that we believe we should be sending pork to China.
Maybe I'll ask Jed and Andrew to maybe comment just in China in general, maybe even from a broader perspective, because both Court Ewa, John Deere are global companies with operations in China. But how has the COVID-19 pandemic impacted your business, not only in China, but in maybe some other key markets?
Great question. I'll jump in first and then let Andrew take a shot at it. Certainly we have a business in China, both on the seed and the crop protection side. I would say from a COVID standpoint, there was a period of time there where we were making sure that we had multiple suppliers in multiple countries for some active ingredients to make sure we didn't have any big supply disruption. And so we're over that hump and everything is fine, at this point in time. I do agree with Craig that there seems to be a lot of ongoing posturing in terms of filling the commitments that the Chinese have made to purchase U.S. goods, particularly U.S. ag commodities and goods. The one thing that China probably, maybe this is good and maybe it's not, that did for us is that we saw COVID coming maybe a month or greater ahead of when we had to start to really address it in the U.S. because of our China business over there, and a lot of the activities, and we got kind of a 3-week head start knowing what could happen if we had to deal with it here. So but those would be my comments, Jay.
Yeah, Jay, maybe just a couple of things. Certainly from the global perspective, the South American markets for John Deere, there's a lot of soybean production, and that certainly has been a lift for the South American farmer in selling into China. So we see that in reflected through our ability to sell equipment into those markets, and then the pork producer. The margins for the European pork producers exporting into China has been very strong. So, we're seeing, customer strength in pockets as a result of the demand. The demand is still there, certainly from China. It's where they're sourcing it from. And I guess, similar comments to what Jed just said, we've got operations in China as well. And so coming out of the Chinese New Year, really the end of January, early February is when they really went on lockdown. And so we were able to kind of see what was happening in that marketplace first to help us position the businesses a little bit ahead of COVID, but again, not to the extent of which we've had to make adjustments in every operation around the globe. Certainly with what was being reported out of China, had people believing it was something that was much more manageable than what it's proven to be.
Well, thanks for the insightful responses. There's a quick comment here. Andrew, I know you can't read this since you're on the phone, but I do want to share this with you. And Jed, thanks for the reminder in terms of the great partnership that you had mentioned earlier with Mercy for the testing. But Andrew, just to let you know, there was a post thanking John Deere, specifically your Ankeny facility, for providing face shields for so many partner organizations here in Central Iowa. So big shout out to your team. And I know that your facilities across the country have been doing that as well too. So thank you for that. I think, again, a great example of community collaboration and partnership. So thank you, Andrew, for that.
Yeah, thanks for passing that along, Jay.
You bet.
I will do the same. Thank you.
You bet. Well, Craig and Jed and Andrew, thank you for joining us today. Just 3 really great leaders that we're lucky to have here in our state and here in DSM USA. So thanks for what you're doing, and thanks for joining us today. We know you're very, very busy. So again, please let us know if we can be helpful in any way. We're now going to pivot into a quick presentation, or quick update, I should say, from Kelly Foss with the downtown Des Moines Farmers Market, with an exciting new initiative that we are working to roll out. Kelly.
Yes. Hi, Jay. Thank you so much. Can you hear me all right?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Thanks for inviting me to provide an update on the downtown farmers market. With a few farmers markets opening around the state, we've had questions regarding if or when the downtown farmers market would open. And with the size of our market, there are many elements to take into consideration. And as you can imagine, we have nearly 300 farmers, producers, artists, and a typical day of the market could attract thousands, sometimes 25 to 30,000 market patrons. So with the many variables and modifications that need our careful consideration, we do not yet have plans to open a physical market. But I wanted to share what we've been doing and some updates that we do have going on with the market, because if you are like many of us, you've been craving the fun and the freshness of the market, and want to let you know we've been working to keep the market rolling, although we're not at a physical location. I guess practicing our resiliency, right? So as we have been working to determine the next steps for the market, it's really a collaborative effort with our sponsors, as well as our vendors and the city of Des Moines, and really our entire community. And our goal, we'll continue to really creatively connect our community with our farmers and our producers that participate in the market. And we're taking incremental steps and making sure that we're going to continue to maintain, of course, the health and safety guidelines. And we've had a little bit of fun creating a farmer's market without actually having a farmer's market on Court Avenue that we all know and love. So in exchange for a physical market, we kicked off what would be our opening day, the first Saturday of May, a few weeks back, with a Facebook Live virtual market meetup. And it was a live 1 hour long virtual farmers market. We highlighted vendors and market producers and all of our amazing sponsors. Big shout out to, thank you very much to Unity Point Health for continuing to sponsor the market and helping us to produce a market without having a physical market. So thanks for that. So we produced 3 Saturday morning virtual market meetups, and they're actually still available to be watched on Facebook. So on Saturday mornings, when you want to listen to a little bit of market music and see some market vendors, you can check our Facebook Live, or the rewatch of our Facebook Live. So as we have paused all of our physical downtown farmers market functions, our goal really is to just continue to bring engaging, innovative programming that will kind of keep the spirit of the market, even if it's just virtually for now. So social media and our website has really helped us to do that. Additional virtual programming that we do have on our website right now, we created a toolkit with downloadable healthy food activities and coloring sheets for kids and families. Since so many people are at home, it's a great way to kind of keep the spirit of the market while you're at home with your kids. And we've also incorporated some printable recipes, and those are highlighting fresh and in-season produce to keep people cooking healthy food while they're at home. And so what's next is we just continue to work internally to determine, what's next and how we can build upon a market that's not actually physical. So we're in the midst of creating an online ordering platform that will further connect our vendors and our customers. And we are actually currently working on the details to integrate this brand new online platform. We're calling it the Online Marketplace, and it's going to allow our vendors to take virtual orders, and then they'll designate their own pickup or delivery location that will obviously not be at a central market. So their delivery location might be at their farm or their retail shop or other locations, maybe around the metro area. And so most of our vendors will be participating. Some of them are located quite a distance from the metro, so there are some challenges with that, but most will be participating. And I guess we see this platform as kind of our next step to continue to keep the spirit of the market while we continue to connect our community with all the local farmers that are growing great food for us. And this platform will be key for us when we're ready to transition incrementally to a more physical market. So, and it will also offer the ability to grow and adapt with our market. So what that means is even next year when we do have a physical market, this online platform will be helpful for vendors to take pre-orders and make shopping at the market a little, even virtual when we have a physical market. So we're really excited about this online platform. I wanted to let you know about it. We're really close to rolling this out, and we hope to publicly announce it within the next week.
Thanks, Kelly. Thanks for your leadership. Thanks for making time for us today. We appreciate it very much. Look forward to the new online platform. I've seen some previews of it. It's very, very exciting. And look forward to the next steps of the market as this continues to evolve. So Kelly, thank you for your leadership and thanks for joining us today. We're running just a little bit late, but we're going to roll quickly as we always do into calls to action, because calls to action are in many ways the most important parts of these calls. And so Tiffany, if you want to lead us in these calls to action, and then we'll wrap this up. Tiffany.
You bet. Thanks, Jay. So I have dropped into the chat function links to the Iowa Economic Development Authority survey. That is open until Friday. So please take a few moments. It's very brief. Take that survey, share it with your colleagues. Also, I have dropped into the chat box the reminder, the link to the Small Business Recovery Grants information that is open through May 31st, as well as a link to the DSM Tutor Connection. And as a parent whose kids are now using this program, it is so slick. It is definitely worth it. Take the time to check that out if you have kiddos at home and are trying to do work and juggle homeschooling. This has been a really helpful program. Also, just a reminder about DSM Forward. Please let us know if you have any storytelling or interest in participating in a webinar or podcast or blog. And finally, on the last slide here, there is a list of upcoming events, and want to draw your attention to a couple that we have that might be of in particular interest to you. On Friday, we're hosting Iowa Cubs, Iowa Wolves, Iowa Wilds, talk about the future of minor league sports right now in DSM. And also on Monday, we have Lee Mandelbaum from China Iowa Group, who I know is on the call, as well as AJ Mum from Polk County Emergency Management, going to talk about PPE. So you'll have access to those experts to learn more about how to get in contact with vendors, as well as how to select a vendor for PPE. So some great tips for businesses through those, and content through those different events. Jay?
Thank you so much, Tiffany, and thanks to all of you again for joining us today. We appreciate it very much, and thank you for your ongoing support and commitment to the partnership. We will be having another investor and member briefing next Wednesday at noon. We'll continue to get updates from our healthcare partners and also be featuring some of our utility partners in terms of what they've been doing to make pivot here with COVID-19. I'd mentioned it in my opening remarks, some of the new stats that have been rolled out in terms of population, but I kind of want to wrap up with what does that mean as a whole. And so, you know, we've been hovering around 91st largest MSA for multiple years. And partially because of these newer numbers, and also with sort of the new configuration of how they're looking at MSAs, the DSM MSA, we moved from 91st to 83rd. So I think that's pretty exciting in terms of how we sort of stack up with our competition, and shows that rapid growth that we've had over the past decade, and all the great work that all of you have been doing to drive economic growth here in Central Iowa, and we're going to keep moving forward together with that as well too. Just closing with a very quick sort of a story. Tiffany had mentioned this earlier today on a separate call, but Drew McClellan did a webinar for us yesterday, and talking about the importance of continuing to have marketing strategies. But he talked about, you know, all of us, whether it's your company or us as a region, we're all in a boat together. And as we're moving forward, we shouldn't wait for other outside winds to blow us. We need to put the oars in the water and continue rowing forward in the same direction. So that's our call to action. Continue to row together in the same direction, and together we'll continue to keep DSM strong. So we'll see you next week, if not before, and thanks for all the great work you're doing.